Jeremiah, it feels like we've been trying to do this for 2 years. Try to figure out a way because there's so much information out there in college athletics, and I know you want to share that info, and I think we finally have figured out the right way to do it with this podcast.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about this. We've probably done 100 interviews.
Yeah.
But we've never done podcasts.
No, I
So
know.
this will be fun. You know, one of the things, and you and I talked about this over the summer, is there's so much information, you know, kind of week to week,
Yeah.
and how everything changes and the updates from our competitive schedules. Just be fun to kind of do, you know, kind of more of a segment, you know, every few weeks,
Yeah.
and get caught up on the things and talk about things outside these walls that are going on in our industry. So I'm looking forward to starting something new with you.
Every time I sit down with you, though, I feel like I learn a little something. And, you know, for folks who don't know the House settlement, they hear about the House settlement. That has nothing to do with the House of Representatives, you know?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many fans will come up to you and go, man, what is the House of Representatives doing involved in college athletics?
Yeah, and sometimes people think house like as in like a building, like the
Yes.
house you
Yeah.
live in.
Yeah.
So what's ironic about the House settlement is it's named for a guy named Grant House,
Right.
who was a swimmer at Arizona State. And so, you know, I'll start with a little piece of irony is that, you know, what's come from the House settlement is really three things, right? There's these backward-looking damages from the plaintiffs class that the NCAA and the power schools, including TCU, will pay. There's the abolishment of scholarship limits, and now we'll move to roster limits. But the big one is revenue sharing. So what's ironic about Grant House versus the NCAA House settlement is revenue sharing, which will probably be shared by revenue-generated sports,
Right.
originated from a student athlete who was in a sport that was not revenue generating. So think about that. I think if Grant House were sitting here today and I've never met him, I don't know this is how he imagined this was going to go down.
Is this what happens when lawyers get involved?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can say that. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's
And you're a recovering lawyer.
I'm
so-
a recovering lawyer.
yeah.
Yeah, like if you looked at my profile, I do have a JD.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I never dreamed of being, you know, kind of Johnny lawyer in front
Sure.
of the judge. I always saw that as being a means to having a career in sports.
Yeah.
Professional sports, college sports, and so. But back to the House settlement. You know, this is a total game changer for us, and people use those words all the time. But like we're changing our business model in real time. We don't have 5 years to figure this out. I would have loved that, had a more kind of an elegant transition there. But, you know, we need to have answers in the next few months because we're in this recruiting cycle. Revenue sharing kicks in next year.
Right.
And so we don't know how we're paying or who we're paying yet. We've known that like we've committed to the maximum level of revenue sharing.
Right.
So whether you're the biggest budget in the country, you know, no one will be able to pay more than we are. We've
Okay.
committed to that as an institution. It's a
Yeah.
great thing for TCU. It's a great thing for our student athletes. It's a great thing for our fans because that doesn't guarantee wins. But what it does say is it's going to give you a chance to be competitive at the highest level, and that's our mission.
Well, every day I pick up the paper, or I don't pick up the paper anymore, but every day
I still
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
I still read the Star Telegram and
that's
the Wall
good.
Street Journal.
I read it online. I mean, but every day I pick up my iPad and I read where there's another lawsuit though,
Mhm.
and so when I read that, I'm like, well, I mean, is this thing even over?
No, it's not. It's hard to keep up with. Yesterday, I saw 2 former Michigan players
Yeah.
filed another lawsuit, and you know, one of the things that is the challenge is to aggregate as many of these claims as possible. But you feel like something big has to happen for there to be peace, and it's never going to be perfect. You know, in any industry, when you have, I mean, think about the hundreds of thousands of former student athletes that are made up of all of our teams. That's
Right.
incredible. They all, you know, so a lot of them are, you know, kind of organizing to you know, seek damages, if you will, for things they didn't have access to, right?
Yeah.
And NIL is the biggest one. I think these 2 players, and I can't remember their names off the top of my head, Denard Robinson,
he's
Braylon
one of them.
Edwards, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, they were standouts in Michigan, right? And you think about all the exposure they brought to the university, they're probably sitting here going, you know, I didn't get a chance to capitalize on my talent. So I get it, I do. But at some point, like, how far do you go back?
Right.
I was talking to Hunter Ennis yesterday, who was like our Hall of Famer. I
Yeah.
mean, that guy, you know, played at TCU in the I believe in the 50s
Yeah.
and 60s, and he, like, does it go back to him?
Right.
Because he certainly could deserve a piece.
Sure.
That's my point. Is I'm making a joke, But at some point, we've got to just draw the line and say, unfortunately, this is when, this is the class when the damages begin. And I think that the current class, the plaintiff's attorneys probably did a good job of finding that, because there's a statute of limitations. You can't go back 100 years.
Right, right.
So we could keep doing this until we're all out of business, and that doesn't make a lot of sense.
But what do you say, though, to the Hunter Ennis's and the P.D. Shabays and the Norm Boulashes and all those guys who back in the day gave a lot to TCU, on the field,
Mm-hmm.
and they hear the term damages and they say,
It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, what do you say?
Well, you start by saying thank you,
Yeah.
because they created a foundation to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
Because back then there were no TV media deals.
Right,
I'd like to know this. This would be
That's
a good
true.
question for our media department. What was the first TCU game that was televised? The first football game that was televised, right? Or basketball. I'm assuming it was football, but it could have been basketball, because that's really where things started rolling, right? And then so you could start calculating and doing the math, and there's where the rise of coaches' salaries and administrative salaries and budgets are directly tied with media deals, right? So maybe for our next podcast, we're going to come in with that information. But so what you say back to the Norms and the Hunters and the Dick Lowe's of the world, you say thank you, because their product was so good, it was so coveted, that it led to media getting involved, and it's really taken off from there. But that would be a really interesting thing to know.
But the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? I mean, there's no getting. I mean, we're not going to go back to the days like that where there isn't some sort of allocation for student athletes. That's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's going to happen next year.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And look, it's probably the right thing to do. I mean, name another business where you don't pay the talent.
Yeah, and I totally get that. But the argument that some would say is, but what about the scholarship, man? To go to TCU, it's a lot of money.
And it's part of it. That's absolutely part of it. And this is actually a great debate. I have this debate, a few times
I'm sure
a week.
you do. Yeah.
Well, it's just, and that was always our thing, is we hung on to this notion of amateurism forever. And we said, but you're getting a scholarship, you're getting an education. Those changed my life.
Right.
Those changed your life.
Yeah,
Those changing your kids' lives in real time. Those are really, really important things. If that's the only thing you got from it, that's worthwhile. But you also have to say, just take football for a moment, because we're sitting here looking over our stadium. A lot of these kids aren't going to play in the pros. And this is the one time in their life they can capitalize on their talent. Their talent, which is bringing in resources and attention and money to this institution, right? It makes sense. I think it totally makes sense that they should share in this. Now, I don't love how we got here.
Yeah.
I wish I could go back 25 years ago and we could have found a more elegant way to get here, but so be it. It is what it is. I do think those student athletes and those that are bringing forth these claims, that are changing our model, they'll be on the right side of history. And so it's hard to kind of feel that way in the moment, because, we're working around the clock to prepare for this. I mean, if you're recruiting right now, you need some answers. Not in 7 months. Signing day for basketball is coming in. Coming in a couple months.
Yeah.
Football is right behind it, and so we've got to be prepared to give them some clarity, some certainty, some answers, and we will be. But it's just a real challenging time for everybody.
I'm hitting you with some heavy stuff here early, and I want to have some fun. But I got
this is fun.
Yeah.
These are as one of my colleagues said right before we started. These are first world problems, right? So I think we also have to put a perspective in that we'll find a way. This is a very resilient business, and so sometimes it's not going to be perfect. It won't be perfect, but it will be. We'll find a good path.
I'm watching Monday Night Football. No, I was watching Sunday Night Football. Rams, Lions. And at the beginning of the game, they run through the starting lineups. And the players are there, and Joe Noteboom starting at left tackle from TCU. And Steve Avila starting at left guard for the Rams from TCU. And they both said that, and that feels good. That sounds good. You love that.
Never gets old.
No, it never gets old. And then I'm sitting there thinking, Jeremiah, this is where you got to walk me off the ledge. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm thinking, okay, in today's transfer portal world, will there come a point, like where will those guys in the future say they are from?
Well, it's funny you say that. We had this internal debate. We have an Olympian, Amy Okonkwo.
Yes.
And I'm not going to throw any shade at our friends at USC or Jen Cohen, my good friend, the athletic director there. but she played at TCU.
Yep.
She transferred from USC to TCU. Well, she starred for the Nigerian national team in Paris at the Olympics. Well, USC is still claiming
Yes,
her
as an Olympian. Yeah.
It's one of theirs.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, Jen, but that's a great point. And there's Tyler Guyton, who's now with the Cowboys,
Yep.
started here and then ended up at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. And I guess it's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if there are student athletes that spend a majority of their time and then transfer somewhere else, but still go back to school one.
I think you're right.
When they have that. I think there's some. I mean, we've had some that, were here 4 years and then transferred for their grad transfer or grad school year.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a good question, but a lot of change. I mean, this transfer portal, they're not going to undo that. I still hear from some people, well, will we stop the transfer portal? No, the NCAA has made it clear that the transferability of student athletes is important to them, just like it would be a normal student. So we can manage it better, but it's not going anywhere. It's not going away.
Sonny brought up a good point this week on his coach's show. He was talking about the importance of culture.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the transfer portal, culture plays a huge role in it. And you think about it, TCU, the players, this will sound wrong, but the players that you wanted to stay have stayed at TCU. And it's because of the culture.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, I tell you, it's a quality you look for in coaches now in any sport, is that can you build a culture that has a retention tool to it, right? The kids want to stay and they want to be involved.
Yeah.
When it's funny is, we make this big deal about, these kids, they only want the money. I tell you, the number one thing out of recruits' mouths when I meet with them and their family is their teammates and their culture and the team atmosphere is the first thing out of their mouth that they care about. Because I always ask them, they'll be sitting in my office, I'm there with their parents, and it's always fun to talk to a 17 or even 18-year-old who's, looking at all these schools, and I like hearing about what their dreams and hopes and biggest fears are. And so I'll ask them, I said, what's important to you? Yeah. And they'll always say the team, my teammates, the culture. I swear, Brian, that's like the first thing out of their mouth 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Only a couple of times we've gone straight into NIL.
Right,
and typically those kids, just to be honest, even though we've got a great NIL program, the Flying T's been fantastic, and like I said, we'll be the top of the revenue share. Those kids really aren't a great fit here.
Yeah.
We want kids who want to be here for other reasons.
Yeah.
They want to play here. They want to go to this school. They want to live in Fort Worth. They want to wear the purple and white and black. They want to do those things. And so for us, and every school is different. It's no knock on another place, but if it's just about the money, show me a championship culture where every single person in that room is just about the money.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Like, you got to play for each other at some point, right?
Yeah.
And you got to play for something bigger.
And TCU's always done a good job. And I think the thing that makes me most proud when I see TCU and how it's changed over 30 years now is how they treat the student athlete and the systems in place for them. And I use the term systems, but it's much more personal than that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, nutrition and sports medicine and equipment and travel and all the things that kind of go into it. When you think about a $20 million commitment that you have to make now for revenue share, does that affect those student services at any point?
No, there won't be. Look, what you just mentioned is really important because we do spend a lot of resources on those services for student athletes. But the most important, the best asset we have is our people.
Yeah.
And the way my staff, the one thing I'm super proud about is my staff, we love these kids and they pour into these kids every single day. It matters to them. They get emotional about it when things don't go right, or when those kids are having trouble, or when things aren't going well in their lives. It's a big deal. We talk about it. And so those things you can't put a price tag on. We have an unbelievable staff that just, like I said, just gives their heart and soul and pours into these kids every single day. One of the things we do talk about is what's going to look like when we have a number of student athletes making a lot of money. Some already are, we know that. But the disparity there, what's that dynamic going to look like here and on campus? And so those are real challenges that we got to work through. But I think being open and honest about it and, accepting the fact that there are changes in our world, I think is where you start. Let's not hide from it.
Yeah.
And so, but to answer your question directly, we're not taking away from something. One thing I want to do is whether you're in a non-revenue generating sport or you're the starting quarterback, at TCU, or someone with a massive profile, like, we want you to leave here with an awesome experience, right? I want you to be proud to be a Horned Frog, whether you were here for 1 year and graduated, or 4 years or 5 years and graduated. We want you to think of going home and recommending the school to a younger, high school athlete. I mean, that to me is the ultimate sign of we were successful in this young man or young woman's life. And so, this is just a stop along the way of hopefully a long, successful life. And so, what the skills we're trying to give people, the services we pour into them, they're important in the moment, but they're more important when they leave here. So, I took the long way around the block there of saying, no, we're not going to pull back on services. That was a big thing. As we looked at reallocating some resources and even cutting in some places to make sure we could,
Right.
meet the rev share, I was pretty adamant about, and the chancellor and the president and our board was adamant about, we're not going to diminish the experience. In fact, we're going to enhance it. And so you're going to see a number of things in the future that will support that.
Chase Curtis had a throwaway line the other day that I don't think anybody caught. And he was talking about his experience at TCU. This is a Frog tight end senior from Pittsburgh, Kansas.
And that's catch the other night.
Yeah, had his second touchdown of his career. He said there's any number of guys in the equipment room and in the sports medicine room that if I had a flat tire, I could call them and they would be there to help me like that.
Uh-huh.
That goes back to what you're talking about with people.
Yep.
That's a throwaway line. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody called it. And I wrote it down.
Yeah, he's 100% right.
Yeah.
And he's 100% right. I mean, it's amazing to me how much of a personal relationship our staff has with our players that aren't, like, say, on the football staff in that case. And so that means a lot to me. That's the best. I mean, I love hearing those things.
That's the ultimate compliment.
That's the ultimate compliment.
Yeah.
So, we didn't ask him to say that. No one asked him to say that, but the fact that just came to him organically, I think, means we're on to something. It means we're on the right path. It's never perfect. It's, I think about this a lot. We've got 250 employees. We've got 550 student athletes, more or less. There's 800 people,
Right.
That are more or less, kind of in our system here. And this is just we're just one cog in the wheel of TCU,
Yeah.
right? And so a lot can go wrong. I mean, there are days that things just don't go. It's just not your day. That's life. But you just got to keep hammering and keep pushing at it. And that's one thing I think about our staff, that they're very resilient, and we're persistent, we're consistent, right? Like, that's the biggest thing, just showing up every day and being consistent. So I think in Chase's case, I think it's cool to see that's made an impact on him.
By the way, that's a pretty good ratio too, as far as staff to student athlete. We've heard other schools down south where they had more staff than needed athletes. And
yeah,
you work efficiently too.
We do. That's one of the things that I love about this place, and I'm a product of it too. We ask people to wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
And it might not show up in your job description, but that's expected of you if you're going to work at TCU, not just in athletics, but across campus. I think that's part of our secret sauce. And I also think that makes for better career trajectory.
Yeah.
Like, if you can be here and do multiple things, and I can give you 20 examples of young men and women who have left here for bigger opportunities. And I think they would tell you, if they were sitting here in the room, that we prepared them for that. And so it's not just about preparing the student athletes here. It's also about, I was fortunate. I had some great mentors along the way, people that saw something in me when maybe others, maybe when there's nothing to see.
Yeah.
When I was a 20 or 21-year-old, I can think of Jim Livengood and Lee Steinberg and Chris Del Conte and others who pushed me out of my comfort zone and gave me opportunities. And so I try to do that with my staff and try to, lift them up. And the greatest compliment you could ever get is when someone walks in my office and said, "Hey, I've just got this massive job opportunity somewhere else."
Yeah.
It means we did right by this person.
It's funny you bring that up, because I recently saw the first athletic director who hired me in another school at an event, and I didn't say, and I went up to him and I gave him a big hug, and you know how we would normally say, "Thank you for hiring me."
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me a chance. The thing I said to him was, I said, "Thank you for not firing me." And he laughed, and I'm like, "Because you had your chances,
Yeah.
but thank you for not firing me."
I gave you plenty to work with there.
Exactly. But early on, thank you for not firing me. But no, there's something to be said about the opportunities that are given. And speed opportunity, I want to transition real quick. I'm just going to be blunt. Is UConn coming in the league or not?
Well,
It feels like we've been talking about him for 2 years.
yeah, no, they're not. And Yormark, Commissioner Yormark put out a statement last week. I just think, it wouldn't be. I can speak about it now because it's in writing. But I just think with any conference expansion, there's going to be more. Could be UConn, could be other schools.
Yeah.
I just think with the timing right now, with everything going on, back to the House settlement for a moment, there's just so much uncertainty in the world that I think that there's probably a good pause for now for a lot of reasons. But obviously they've done a tremendous job building their athletics department, and it's just like I said, I don't want to talk about a school that's in another league. It wouldn't be appropriate, but since it's in writing, I can say it. But so I just think any conference realignment, there's more coming. We just don't know kind of where there's it's not breaking news that there's a lot of kind of uncertainty in other conferences. And so we'll see. I mean, I love where we sit. I love the new composition of the Big 12. I love the 16 schools. I was sitting there looking at the map. Somehow it came up on a Twitter or a tweet the other day. And I just saw all the logos just geographically spread out across the U.S. And I thought, man, that's really cool. It really is a national. Every time it really is a national league. National conference rather. And so will we ever go above 16? I don't know. I would say this, if you start kind of inching closer to 20, boy, scheduling gets really tough.
Yeah.
And the one thing I don't love about being a bigger league is, there's a number of schools you don't play.
Yeah.
And so, we're always going to play Baylor. That's a protected game. I'm talking football for a moment. We're always going to play the Baylor. That's our, our biggest rivalry in the league. But like this year, you don't play West Virginia, you don't play Arizona State, you don't play Colorado, and you're not, like I said, you're that's the trade-off. But if you get much bigger than that, if it's a 24-team league, at some point you can only play really 9 conference games. I guess you could stretch to 10, but it just becomes different. So I don't know. Hopefully that's a ways out there, but consolidation, conference realignment, those things are, I'm sure you're going to ask me about private equity at some point, but those things are probably, we should anticipate those things happening. They're not, I don't see those things on the horizon tomorrow, but you look out, kind of over the mountains there, and it's coming. I mean, they just made the NFL just changed the rule where they can allow up to 10% ownership in private equity. You might have seen that last week. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So again, it's kind of coming into the business if you just think about sports overall. So don't know how quite it fits yet with college athletics, but it's definitely something that's on our minds, and we're looking at institutionally, conference-wide, and bigger.
You remind me of a funny story, and I may have told you this story when conferences get really big. When TCU moved into Conference USA, you had football playing schools and you had basketball playing schools.
Mm-hmm.
And in basketball, you had, I think at that point, Jeremiah, 14 or 16 teams playing basketball, and they went into these quadrants. They went 4 quadrants. It was crazy. And we're in Las Vegas, and I'm walking with Billy Tubbs. We had just gotten into Conference USA, and we're walking down the hallway.
Another Billy Tubbs story. I love these.
Exactly. We're walking down the hallway, and a gentleman walks past us, and he says, "Hey, Coach, good luck tonight. Get one for the league." And Coach Tubbs goes, "Yeah, man, thank you." And we keep walking, and we walk another 20 feet, and he turns to me, he goes, "Hey, Brian, who was that?" And I said, "Coach, that's Lorenzo Romar, the coach at St. Louis. They're in our league now." But that's how big the league was. He didn't know. He goes, "St. Louis is in our league?" I said, "Yes."
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I guess I hadn't even thought of that. St. Louis was in the league,
yes.
right?
Yeah, they were in Conference USA at the time.
Yeah, and you had, it wasn't like the Patino coached Louisville.
Oh, yeah. It was,
teams.
Basketball-wise, it was a great league.
Yeah.
Cincinnati was good with Huggins at the time. There was some good teams, but I thought it was funny that he goes, who was that? Oh, they're in our league? That's how big it had got.
You just made me think of something. Lorenzo Romar gave me a great piece of advice one time at a basketball camp when I was in high school. He was the assistant at UCLA at the time. And I'll never forget this. I always tell, I told a walk-on on our basketball team this the other day, there's always room for a shooter.
Yeah.
I was a good player in high school, but I wasn't like,
right,
an elite player.
But if you can shoot.
If you can shoot, there's a spot for you, right?
Yeah, that's
know your role.
That's the another Billy Tubbs line. We're at Oklahoma, and he was there as a fan.
Uh-huh.
It was when Coach Johnson was here, and I see him at halftime, and I said, "Hey, Coach, what do you think?" And we were playing them tight. It was a tight game. I said, "What do you think?" I said, "Coach Johnson thinks he's added a few shooters," and he looked at me and he goes, "Brian, he doesn't need any more shooters. He needs some makers."
Some makers.
If you're a
There's
maker,
always room for makers.
Yeah, makers are always got spot on the roster, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you when you walk away, and you never really walk away? I know you. But at night when you go home
Mhm.
and you're relaxing, how do you do that? How do you find time to do it, and how do you do it? How do you take that deep breath and sort of clear the head?
Try to compartmentalize a little bit. I've got a rule, a family rule, that I never walk in the house on the phone.
Good for you.
And actually learned that from um, another colleague at another school. That just we were talking about just some kind of best practices about
Yeah.
work and family, and how do this is not a job, it's a lifestyle. And so your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, they've got to be on board with that. Your
Yes.
kids, because you can't, if you're expected to just go home and not have, like I said, there's 800 people here that are relying on me to some extent, and I can't just go home and there's a big issue and say, well, I'll just deal with it tomorrow.
Right.
Right. I want to sit here and watch the debate. We were talking about the presidential debate before, when I can't, you can't do that. And so, but what you can do is little things. So like try to go in and try to be in the moment, try to be present through dinner. And then I'll have a little check-in. I might check the email. Sometimes I really enjoy going for walks in the evening, if nothing else, just to kind of clear my head, start preparing for tomorrow. And I'll do those walks, and typically I won't be on the phone. And it's just kind of me and my dogs or me on a walk, just to kind of clear that gives me peace. I don't need 2 hours of it.
Right.
Sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes, but I try to do that. I know, doing physical activity, working out, that type of thing is really important. I know, and actually Monica, my assistant, who's just unbelievable. You know Monica well. Yesterday was a really busy day, and I was just from meeting to Zoom call to meeting to Zoom call. One of those days, where you're eating at your desk, and just a busy day. No big deal, busy day. But towards the end of the day, she could tell I was just kind of like, I need to get out of the office.
Yeah.
The walls were kind of closing on me a little bit. And I said, do I have time to grab a quick workout? I had a call later. And she said, she just pointed at the door, go. Just go. Ironically, I went in there, and Coach Dykes was coming out there. He needed 30 minutes in the treadmill to clear the mechanism before he's going back into a meeting. And I think that's important. I mean, you do need to stay sharp mentally. And if your kind of brain's a bunch of different places, they're not going to get the best version of me. They're not going to get the best version of our coaches. And so I really think those two things, mental health and physical health, are directly attached. There's a correlation between the two. I think if you can keep in good shape, and if you can stay happy and healthy, I think that you show up better, right? And it's about controlling the things that are within your control. So to answer your question, those are some. I like to read.
Yeah.
I really enjoy reading. Sometimes it's a novel, sometimes it's a professional development, sometimes it's the newspaper. But I think those things, when I'm at my best, those things are all kind of, I'm doing all those things. I'm getting exercise, I'm getting rest, I'm getting some me time, some kind of mental clarity, some little mental health moments throughout the day and the week. And when those things are all unchecked, I'm kind of at my best. When they're not, I can feel it. I know.
I'm going to tell you something I observed about you, because we travel together a lot, because you're with teams and I'm with teams, especially in basketball. And we're on a long road trip, and I thought, you know what? I love how he kind of divided the flight. And you did. You got on the plane and you got out your iPad, and you kind of write on your iPad, don't you? Yeah. And I could see you were looking at contracts or something like that. I didn't know what it was. Don't worry, I wasn't looking over your shoulder. But
it was your extension.
Yeah, we were kind of probably. Yeah, we were kind of catty corner. I could see what you were doing across the aisle, and you did that for like 45 minutes, and then you pulled out a book, and you read for like 30, 45 minutes, and then you put on a movie, and you laughed. And it looked like a movie that Estridge would watch, some silly Zach Galifianakis,
Step Brothers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you sat there and you watched part of a movie and you laughed. I thought, you know what, that's a good way to divide the time.
Elliot Hill, who's the chair of our athletics committee, who's just a fantastic frog. He taught me a little tactic years ago about dividing up the flight. I like to get some work done on it. And even if I'm on vacation, I like to just check in, do some emails, knock that out. And then
it's quiet.
I like to do something kind of productive. Well, I might watch a podcast or read a book, and then try to just listen to music or just do something relaxing. And so this is kind of silly. I guess this is kind of nerdy, but if I have like a 3-hour flight, I will like try to divide up an hour.
Yeah.
1 and 1 and 1 in my head. If it's an hour, I'll try to divide up, 20 minutes. So it's sometimes it's not perfect, but you just try to find little things along the road.
Yeah.
Like one time they asked Mike Krzyzewski, like, what's your coaching style like? I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah.
I'm not comparing myself to Mike Krzyzewski. And he said he thought about it, and he said, well, it's not one person. You know, who do you model it after? And he listed off like 5 coaches. And he said, I have a little bit of Bobby Knight, I have a little bit of Adolph Rupp, and I kind of put this in this toolbox. I take them along the way to try to help me get better. And I try to do that too. I watch people and I study people, like Victor Boschini and how he interacts with people. He's the best listener. Like he's right here. Like my eyes will be all over the place sometimes, but I'm listening, but not like he is, right? And so he's just one great example. But you try to pick up little things along the way, little tips, and put them in your little toolbox, and to make you a better person, a better leader, a better husband, a better father, a better friend, you know, a better athletic director. So sometimes they're really little, you know, little tactics, but, you know, I try to share those with other people, and some people might think I'm crazy, and some people might think, you know, they get something from it, but it works for me. And so I'm going to continue doing them.
You got Parents Weekend this weekend. I'm wearing all black, by the way. I got the memo.
You know, I was trying to find that shirt for the life of me this morning, and I could not find it. So I got the white version of it. Maybe we'll do a white out for the next game. But yeah, we got Family Weekend, Parents Weekend. One of my top 2 or 3 favorite weekends of the year.
Yeah. It's fun to have everybody back.
Yeah, it is an advertisement for TCU. We're sold out. We get a night game, which I'm really excited about, and for this reason, and I'll talk about the blackout and the reason to do that in just a moment. But typically family weekends have been 11 a.m. games.
Right.
And so I always feel horrible for the parents and the families that are coming in town, because typically it's pretty hot.
Yeah.
It'll be warm this weekend, but by the, 10 minutes into the first quarter, everybody will be in the shade.
Yeah.
But, we decided to do the blackout for this reason. The players were really excited about the new uniforms and the black uniforms. We thought we have last week for LIU, we had the 4th biggest student crowd ever.
Over 6,000, right?
Yeah. 6,200.
Yeah.
Or almost 6,200. Think about that. That's more than half of the student body.
That's amazing.
And so the students love when we wear black, and it had circulated a little bit that we were thinking about it. And the feedback from our players, the students were like, we'd love to do that.
Let's do it.
Football called me up and said, hey, we're on board with that.
Yeah.
And so I said, look, here's the deal. The only thing I can do, I can't call a play. I can't score a touchdown. I can't, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't score a touchdown, but we can set up the game to be as big as possible. And I thought, man, if we had those students rocking and they're wearing black and the players come out and they feel good about these new uniforms, heck, hopefully we can contribute to an awesome environment that may be conducive to playing better.
Yeah.
That may help in the win-loss category.
It all adds up.
Right? It all adds up. So like I was getting a little flack from some folks that were saying, well, why wear black? UCF wears black. Well, they're not wearing black. They're wearing white.
Yeah,
that's what
they're on
pro
the
teams
road.
do. They wear white.
Yeah.
So knock that one right out of the system. But black has really become, it's never going to be purple for us, but it has become a color that our players love, our players respond to, our students love. And so there's fun little moments like that. And I think sometimes we can't take ourselves too seriously. We got to adapt to the moment. I think that's one of the best things that we can do as an institution is we can adapt to the moment and we can be flexible. And so I commend our team. We ordered 15,000 towels like that. We ordered black shirts for the students like that. Julie Austin, our marketing team, and Ryan Peck, they were on it. And so that's a strength of ours. That's an advantage we have as a school, is that we can get together and we can make decisions quickly that hopefully have an impact on our teams.
Speaking of timing, our time has come to wrap this one up.
Man, that was quick.
Yeah, I know. Can we do this again?
We can do this again.
We
This was
said
a
we
lot
do
of
it in
fun.
a couple of weeks.
Okay, let's do it.
You good?
Yeah, I love it. I love the cadence of it. Always fun meeting with you.
Yeah.
Again, we've probably done 100 interviews.
I know, but nothing like this.
Nothing like this. This is a lot of fun. So
yeah, and I got through like half of my list.
We'll get back to it. We got more time.
A lot more hard questions. And we got to talk about boxing at some point. Can we?
We talk about boxing. We're not bringing it back as a sport.
No.
You must have found out that's one of my.
You like it, don't you?
I love it.
I used to live with my dad back in the day when the heavyweights were, But it's funny, Jeremiah. I'm not this old, but I remember Ernie Shavers and Ken Norton, and because my dad was into those guys.
Big cowboy, yeah. Well, in my previous career, my previous life, in representation, we actually represent fighters and boxers. So I've got a love for it. We can talk about that.
Let's talk about that at some point.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremiah. Thanks for the time, man.
Hey, absolutely. Good
See you
seeing you.
Saturday.